Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Voyager's Guide to Ravean, Crit D&D kind of world building for the world of Ravean. This time, we're actually going to cover another god called the Melanchus. It's a little bit more interesting of a deity, as he forms a little bit more of an ideal rather than a specific trait and element. Uh, the Melanchus is a relatively kind of neutral evil deity of pressure and pain. He exists to push the world even closer to the breaking point. He is an almost suffocating force of pain and suffering for all people in the world. His ideals are that pressure forms the diamond. But the sad reality is that while this may be true, in some cases, it is not true in all of them. Many people break under the pressure that he exerts, and his seemingly cold and unfeeling reaction to this assessment is an assessment that they're weak. The Melanchus is a smothering force, like a heavy fog on a hot day. The blanketing of this fog is an obscuring and hazy thing that can ultimately lead to the death of the people covered in it. The loyal followers of this clouded killer see the pressure he levels on them as just an effort to force them to grow. This pressure for them may allow for and support their growth, but it may also leave them broken in unforeseeable ways, with many of his devout followers having been partially driven mad from his efforts. The Clouded Killer himself has been described as at least partially mad god, with stories of his existence being most commonly defined as almost disjointed legends where the god pushes people in unforeseen ways to challenge them. Scholars say that these legends are evidence of the god being himself mad. The Melanchus lives by and wishes his followers to live by a few ideals. Pressure makes diamonds. Nothing of value is not hard earned. And death and suffering strengthen the soul. So, let's break down this edgelord of a god just a little bit more. He is an evil deity. He sees what people need, and he sees in typically what is the general traditional form of good for a society, and says, well, I better challenge them because we're going to need them to be better. So, in an almost misguided sort of a way, he says, you know what? They're having a really hard day. Let me make it harder, because then they'll get back into tomorrow and have, and be the better for the experience. So he doesn't know when to take his foot off the gas in terms of this pressure, is kind of the best way to describe it. It's the equivalent of the Jigsaw mentality, right? From the Jigsaw movies, the Saw movies. There, he doesn't see people as really appreciative of life in and of itself, and they need to grow and be better and be stronger. It is life that is won. Life is a hard-won gift that a mortal can earn. It isn't necessarily just given to them. It is a challenge. They have to continue to fight to be better every single day. Because when they get better and better, they approach this divinity that he exudes. It's kind of a cleanliness is the best thing, the closest thing to godliness, except suffering makes you closer to this god. Is kind of the way that he has it designed. Most people have the ability to understand and bounce back from a hard day on their own until he gets involved. And that tends to be the big clincher here, is you can lose your sandwich at lunch, you can stub your toe on the way into work, you can do all of these things that are just minor inconveniences, but that add up to the point where you're like, this day sucked. And then he goes, you know what? And your dog died. Oh, and your family left you behind. What are you going to do now? That's him. He likes to try to make your life even worse to make you grow. He is the tragic backstory to every heroic opener. Likewise, if we were to look at Greek mythology and everything there, he is all of the various trials that these various figures in mythology, these mythological figures, have to undergo. Yeah, maybe it's, hey, you're going to have to suffer through XYZ conflict. And that would be how I would run him within the game. is if I had a follower in my game of the Melanchus, it would be an idea of, hey, he wants you to undergo blank. And so it's just this constant, almost abusive relationship where he's like, hey, you did good, kid. Here's the next thing. Here's the next big challenge. Here's a little bit more power. You can take on the next challenge. So he's a really good level up god, where as you get more powerful as like a paladin or a cleric or anything kind of closely religious, he'll afford you a tiny bit more power because he wants to see you fight the bigger challenge. So he's a really good step in for a more combative DM that always has to come up with a new encounter. It always has to come up with the next most challenging thing for the players, which is a very interesting thing as a DM to have to play that, because it gives you a moment to kind of be the god character. Problem is, he is malicious about it. He doesn't necessarily just want people to grow, he wants them to suffer. He wants to make sure that they suffer so that they can grow, because growth can't happen without suffering, not in his mind. People otherwise within the world of Ravean call him a mad god because he simply doesn't understand how to take his foot off the gas. He will continue to pressure you and level more and more challenges on you, whether or not you're ready for it. Things that are just hard. And his followers see it as a chance to grow. They have this optimistic view of him being this almost Stormbreaker. If you saw the Stormbreaker video, ask God that levels a challenge that he knows you can handle so that you can grow. But he doesn't level it and think you can handle it. He is more than happy to put a small orphaned little girl who's maybe 6 years old on the road to a quest to fight a dragon and just do it on her own with no equipment, no gear. That is him. And if she dies at the hands of the dragon or before that, he goes, she was weak anyway. Might as well try that with somebody else who's a little stronger, and then tries again. That tends to be his goal. He's more willing to throw bodies into the meat grinder than the Stormbreaker is. So his followers, being optimistic, see him as not a mad god, but an equally leveling, challenging god. His detractors call him a madman. Most of the other gods that do not agree with the Melanchus are depicting him as a madman, a psycho, who just enjoys suffering for the sake of suffering and creating these elaborate situations to put people through so that he can enjoy watching them suffer. That would be how they depict him. If you were to play the Melanchus, I would recommend it for sure, because it seems like an extremely fun idea in a various different ways that a DM could run it. But he is a really good, hey, you're going to fight this monster now in this pit fight. You know, maybe the player has a dream sequence where they have to fight this avatar of the Melanchus. And the avatar isn't actually just a spirit of something, but the embodiment of a few different challenges that they have to do. Or maybe it's throughout the campaign, the paladin of the Melanchus has 12 trials, like the trials of Hercules or Heracles, that he has to undergo to prove himself. And over the course of those challenges, it makes it very easy to level them up, all the way up to level 20 from 1 to 20 if you really wanted. So that would be kind of how I would recommend running it, because it's a very interesting deity to explore. He is, as you could see, depicted as someone no one really knows who or what they look like. Perhaps it is just an animate suit of armor, but somebody wearing a dark suit of pointed and hooked armor. His holy symbol is a winged skull with a helmet on it. That tends to be the frightening imagery that he has. So seeing him in and of himself is a challenge. But that'll be it for the Melanchus for this episode. If you have any ideas of what different challenges this god might actually pose to a player, leave those ideas down in the comments. I'd love to hear what ideas someone might have for what this looks like. So, otherwise, keep in mind, like, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. But it doesn't take much to make a difference out there. So be the difference that you want to see in the world. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.